Our next guest is going to be talking about things some crazy stuff. Our first guest was about cooking. Our next guest is going to be about hooking and about some tragedies, actually, to get a little bit serious, on a tough life. Our next guest is Dale Stanton. Dale, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hey, very nice to have you. Dale, is it really true, and I'm going to get right into the nitty-gritty, is it true that your mother was a hooker?
Absolutely true, yes.
And she was doing tricks. She was doing the funky chicken, the nasty or whatever, in a small apartment as you were growing up?
Yes, that's right. At 6 years old, I remember answering the doorbell for the Johns that were ringing the bell.
You were how old when you remember this?
Oh, 6 years old.
6 years old. You started at 6 years old to realize. Did you really know that was occurring?
Well, I knew, I understood there was something not right going on. I don't know that I could have conceptualized it quite as I would as an adult, but certainly I knew, yes.
So how does that, I mean, you had a lot of other things, crazy things happen in your life. And by the way, Dale Stanton is the author of a book called The Hooker's Daughter. But Dale, you had more things happen, but before I get into that, once you started to realize that mom was bringing strangers into the home and having sex with them, and probably somewhere along the line you realized it was for money, what does that do to a 9-year-old? Not a 6 so much, maybe you're too young, but 9, 10, 11. How did you handle that?
Well, it really was a struggle because basically we were ostracized in the community and many children were not allowed to play with me. And I write in my book, I was even asked at that time as a youngster, 9, 10 years old, whatever, to leave the Girl Scouts. They asked me to leave because I might be a bad influence, and I suffered because of it from many aspects of what was going on.
Now, Dale, let me ask you a question, and don't be offended. Were you a bad kid because of this? Because, sometimes when kids see nonsense going on in their home and out of controlness, that's not a word, I'm sure, controlness, but sometimes kids become quote-unquote bad kids. Were you a bad influence kid? Were you a bad influence for other kids?
Actually, on the contrary, no. I was a very good kid because I think at a very young age I knew things weren't right, and I made a vow to be just the opposite, to be a good kid and to not get into any trouble and to protect my family. And if I was good, everything would be fine. So if anything, I carried a greater burden.
Well, I understand where you're going with that because I think I've seen people like that. They've either gone the exact or kind of the exact way, as their bad parents, or they've gone the opposite. It sounds like you went the opposite.
I do believe that, yes, very much so. And I often talk when I go out and make presentations to groups. I often will relate the fact that I think I put blinders on, if you will, and just decided to forge ahead and to take care of myself.
That's good. Okay, but folks, we just found out that Dale had a mom that was doing tricks in a tiny apartment. That's enough for a kid to deal with. Dale, tell me about a father that is a guy that wields a machete, and he's kind of a lunatic. Tell me about your dad.
Well, my dad, my mother and father took it quite badly when my sister, over 50 years ago, came out as a lesbian. In those days, it was not a thing that was certainly embraced, and eventually she ran away from home, and my father, in one of his times of trying to deal with what was going on, expecting her to come home, to sneak home to pick up some clothing, lied in the stock room waiting for her. And of course, I being there, I was about 9 at the time, absolutely horrified that if she in fact did show up, that my father would hurt her. But basically, he was not even though, I mean, it's a very insane thing to have done what he was doing or had planned to do to stop her, I don't know that he would have really executed and hurt her. But he was, in many ways, he was a sad soul who had undergone a lot of disappointments and changes in his life, and it was very difficult.
Now, you talk about your sister. Is your sister still alive, still with us?
Yes, she is.
Is she more comfortable? Maybe she was always comfortable with her choice, or not her choice, her lifestyle that wasn't accepted.
Well, I think so. I think it was a struggle. Now she is. Yes, she certainly reached that level of comfort. The world certainly changed from the time when she had come out, if you will, and life was very difficult in those days. So eventually, through years of her own struggles and problems and what the road her life took her down, eventually she was able to bail out and become a pretty complete, happy person who's functioning very nicely. But it was really difficult as well.
You know, you're saying that she's functioning nicely, and I sit here and I think of what you said in the beginning of our conversation, and what I do know of you from doing a little research before I asked you to be a guest on our show, and it's intriguing, or it grabs my attention, and I think it grabs anybody's. But I'm going to get more serious here. Please tell the people, if you can, if you give any advice, and I'm going to get a little bit into that, why you wrote the book and what you'd like out of it. But you went through a tough time, Dale, and unquestionably, that just knowing what your mom was doing. How does a child that is seeing that and going through that craziness, and then the kids and teachers don't even like you because of what you are now. It's not you, but what you're surrounded with. And your sister is, ostracized. They want to, people don't like her. Your dad is kind of a sad person. He got a machete. So Dale's sitting here. Dale, you sound totally normal to me now. How do you?
Thank you.
When you have all that poop crap hit you in the face, how do you get out of it? How do you stay normal? How do you become normal? Please tell the people.
Okay, my pleasure. If I could really define it, I don't know that I have a solid definition of it. All I know is that, again, as I said a few moments ago, I had vowed to really take care of myself, stay strong, and I did. I worked my way throughout my lifetime. It was really a struggle as I was coming up the ranks of being. I was a voyeur. Maybe that would help. I was a voyeur of life and what other people were doing and what I thought might be normal, and I tried to pay attention to lots of things. I educated myself as best as I could, and I tried to lead what I thought was a sane life.
So you tried.
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
But is that your key? I want to find out what got you there. I mean, was the desire to be normal? Is that what got you to be?
Yes, I think that's a good point. I think it was the desire to be normal, not to be shamed and embarrassed. And I carried guilt and all those things that one suffers with as a result of antisocial behaviors and scams and things that are going on within their environment. And it's a burden. And either you let it get you down, or it's always the question I debate. Was it nature or nurture? Was it that my DNA, that I was able to overcome things, and my psychological strength, if you will? Or was it, in a certain sense, the environment that I said, not for me? So I'm not sure, really, if there's a definitive answer of what makes one succeed and another to fail.
Okay. Well, I think you're giving us a insight into it. Now I'm going to ask you a question that you can throw something at my screen, but I have to ask it. Did it affect your sex life seeing this kind of crazy stuff as a 7, 6, 8, 9-year-old kid?
Actually, I like to also think that my sex life has been a normal one, and that I was able to get married and bore children, and in fact had good relationships, and currently in a marriage that I very much appreciate and respect. And so I basically feel very blessed and grateful that somehow or another it all ended up for me just fine. And maybe that's just the wonderful part of the whole thing. I don't take anything for granted, because when I think about it all, I say, oh my God, it's amazing to me. So I hope that touches on what you're asking.
Well, it totally touches on it, and I think you explain it well. But I'd like to ask you what your kids think that you wrote the book. How do they have any
well, I
bad
would have
things
never
to say?
done it without their permission, because I would have never wanted to hurt. I wouldn't want to hurt them or not have them feel comfortable. And they did give me the okay to go ahead, and were very supportive. What I think has really amazed them, as it has I, is that it has become, of which I'm very appreciative, very successful in terms of people appreciating the book and the story. And I think my kids are actually quite proud of what's happened. As I mentioned earlier, I go out of many presentations now, and my message to people is that this is a book not about condemnation, but about love and forgiveness and triumph over one's demons. And I try to say that when I'm speaking, and I think that resonates with a lot of people after they read the story. So as a result of all the good things now that have come to me, I think that my children are quite proud.
Mm-hmm. I bet they are. Now, is your mother still alive?
No, she's not.
How was your relationship with her when you became an adult? When you were 22, 25, or when you had your own children? How was it?
Right. It was quite a complex relationship. First of all, for those that know the story of my relationship with my mother, I really loved her, and I felt that she saved us from poverty, and I appreciated that her struggles in making the choices she made. I think that it wasn't necessarily the way that she wanted to go. So as a child, I fought her a lot, and once I began to mature and get older, I fought her even more. And yet, as a mother myself, I began certainly to appreciate how she tried to protect us in her way. And so it was a very complex. We fought each other, we loved each other, and it was difficult. She was unable to set boundaries. We were exposed to all her indiscretions, and we were cajoled to participate in many of her manipulations and lying. And as a result of it, certainly we didn't feel great about it. However, on the other hand, she did nurture us in the sense that she was really a very kind and sensitive person, despite the fact that she couldn't set boundaries. And she taught us not to shame others. She cared for her family. And as I said, I really felt she saved us from poverty. And she had a certain quality of a joie de vivre, and we were able to appreciate that certain wonderful strengths we inherited from her, because she showed us certain, in a way, to how to be strong. And one other thing I'd like to add about it is we laughed together, we fought each other to exhaustion, and yet we survived together. She sacrificed my sister and I in order to save herself, and she lied and stole from us, but she sang and danced with us. So if that gives you a kind of sense of what the relationship became.
Well, it gives me a hell of a stance, I'll tell you. I mean, an idea. It gives me first, while you were saying what you were saying about her, I understood. And there's an old saying that says something like, and I'm probably going to get this wrong, but if you know your if everybody knew their enemies' fears and nightmares, you'd never have an enemy again, because you'd see how messed up or how troubled they are. And obviously your mom was the same way, and obviously you learned to understand that at least she kept you out of poverty. She gave you food, or made sure you had food and clothing. So you appreciate that, and that tells me you've left that that part of it is very healthy. But then you also say how did you say she kind of sacrificed you guys for her own selfish needs? Could you tell me what you meant by that?
Yeah, well, again, we were props in many ways for her activities, and we would lie for her, or whatever would be going on. There were other scams that would happen, shoplifting, and men, boyfriends, and besides John. So much was going on all the time that our attitude was we had to protect our mother.
Wow. Hey, when did you move out of your mother's apartment or control? When did you go out on your own?
I'm a product of my generation in that time, when young women didn't leave their homes to go off and fly off. And furthermore, I think I was afraid to. I think that was maybe my weakness, that what would happen to me. So I went from the home to a marriage, and I was 22 years old at the time. And again, it's a little different. I wasn't educated. I didn't have the tools that maybe I feel today. I certainly feel much more equipped. But at 22, I didn't want to go down the tubes, if you will.
Gotcha. Now, in the book, do you talk about any of these crazy things that your mom did? Specifically, do you tell any stories about what happened?
Oh, sure, absolutely. I tell it just like it was. I try to be as candid the way I remember it from being a kid and going forward. And so I pulled no punches in the book.
Tell me a crazy story that your I'll use the term silly mother did. I won't say anything negative because it's not my place and I don't know her, and God rest her soul. But tell me something nuts that
as I said a little earlier in the interview, I feel that the book, like I said, isn't just about bad. It isn't meant to be condemnation like a Mummy Dearest, but it's about love and primarily forgiveness and triumph. And that's the message that I really try to get across about it. It isn't, just all bad.
Okay, you bring up something, and I hear this all the time, and let me play what they call devil's advocate. Why is love and forgiveness important? Why isn't now? Bear with me. Don't swear under your breath about me. Why shouldn't you just go, Mom was an irresponsible, blah, 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 hell with her? Why is it important to love and forgive?
Because it really makes for a healthier situation, to be able to enjoy your life and get over the failings and shortcomings of whatever happened to one in their life, and going back in the past does not serve you. So when I say you, I'll refer to myself, and I feel that I really made peace with the past, and that I don't want to waste my precious energy on anything from there, any negative thoughts or gossip that was, or things that I couldn't control. And that's what was important to me. I made peace with my past so it doesn't ruin the present. I forgave my family, my mother, whatever went on, and I think that that's really the key to being happy, because there's nothing you can do about it. And I think a lot of it is attitude. I like to talk about attitude, about you can't control things, and you can't often change them. The only thing that you can do is try to work with what you have.
Well, I've heard so many people say that about forgiveness and loving and letting things go. And I know somebody that is the opposite of that. They're so bitter about something their father did to them. And the guy's in his 60s, and he's hated all his life, and it's killed him. It's burned him up. The anger that he has for his father. So when I think back to what you're saying, and others too, Dale, other people say what you say, and I think it's so much healthier for you, the person that might have been hurt, to be able to actually forgive and love. So it just is the wholesome, healthy thing for us to do, isn't it? Once we've been through a lot.
Well, I absolutely, that's how I feel about it. There's a parable that I like to speak about, and it really refers to having flaws in your life and trauma, and the example that I'll use, it's a parable about a king. He had the perfect diamond. He dropped it, and a crack developed the length of the stone. The king summoned all the jewelers of the land, and they all came to the same conclusion. The diamond was useless, irredeemably flawed. And then an old gentleman came and said, "Let me examine the diamond. Give me a week and see if I can fix it." He knew that the crack could not be erased, but he carved petals on top of the diamond. Now the crack formed the stem of a blossom. Well, the point is the crack did not disappear, but it was transformed. And so that's how I feel about when you have these kind of problems. We'll never be perfect, but we can turn the flaws into flowers. And
Dale, that's an excellent parable. That is an excellent parable. I've never heard that, but that certainly
isn't it a beautiful parable? I refer to it because we all have flaws and wounds and deficiencies, and nobody likes to admit the imperfections, and to deny them is to hide from ourselves. Life is not about flawlessness, but about overcoming.
Well, it is, but I'm going to be upfront with you. Yeah, we all have our flaws, but not all of us have had a mom that was hooking in the apartment, and some have had worse.
Let me just add, I don't want you to think it was just limited to the apartment, please. It encompassed neighborhoods and far beyond just the apartment. That was just the home front.
That was the home front. But what I'm saying, though, Dale, is that, some people have it very, very badly. And I know from experience and research that I've done and teaching that I do that many of this country's crime and drug abuse and just bad behavior is because they've had terrible things to grow up with. No mother or bad mother, no father. They've seen murder. They've seen tricks being done in the apartment. And they don't have what you're saying, Dale. They don't have that attitude that you're getting across. And I guess your book is I guess that your book will get across to people. Many people do not have that forgiveness or love. They're angry. They have no way to go. And here's a very important question that I must ask you, because it is my experience, Dale, that many people don't know about this, and I don't know how you knew about it. You said you made a decision to be well or something of that nature. How did you know what was well, what was good? Did you just look? How did you know what you wanted to be if you really didn't see it? So tell me about that. I think that's very, very important. Can you get that across to the people listening?
Yes, I will try. I am not exaggerating when I can remember as a little child, as I said, probably 6, 7, saying, okay, this is pretty serious and I better stay strong. That's how I like to term it. And I said earlier, and I think that this is how it happened, that in my own way I was a voyeur of, I lived in a very, very traditional ethnic neighborhood, and families clustered together, and the usual landmarks and events that go on in families. And I think I watched and paid attention and just sort of knew that I had to follow a path. I wish I knew that answer, but in a way I often, now looking back as an older person, think that my mother actually probably sent a message because she was strong and she knew what she had to do. And I think that she sent that message that, we have to be strong and take care of ourselves. We were not allowed to not be, if you will. So I gathered strength. Again, she was very nurturing in her way. I mean, it was very antisocial, so much that went on. But in her own way, she was very loving and very encouraging that we, and I say we, being my sister and myself, that we were wonderful girls and grown up to become wonderful women. So there was, in a sense, a lot of positive reinforcement there, and yet I wish I could give you a definitive, textbook answer of how it happened. I honestly can't tell you.
Dale?
Yep.
Dale, I think you have said a lot about it. And one of the things that I caught what you said is that you came from a very ethnic neighborhood and it's all kind of close-knit. I think that may tell you and tell us, it does to me a little bit, because I do a lot of research on this. It's just it's one of the things that I do a lot of. And you were able to see what was going on there. You were able to see a quote-unquote normal, quote-unquote good, something that is different than what you just said a few minutes ago. I saw that this is serious and this is not good. So you had somewhere at least to look. My fear,
That's
Dale,
correct.
is those families or those neighborhoods where they can't look down the street and see what you saw, maybe. Those good people. I use good by normal. They're not doing these crazy things. They're not hooking out of their house. The neighborhoods that don't have those need mentors like you. Now, I'm going to put you up here because you are talking about, this is the crazy stuff that happened to Dale Stanton. And this is how I turned out. I got loving kids. They like me. I got a marriage that I cherish, et cetera, et cetera. You turned out okay. You're smiling. You wrote a book. So I think what you're doing is mentoring people, even though that you may not know it. And that brings me to one of my last questions. Well, before we get to my last question, ladies and gentlemen, you can go to www.thehookersdaughter.com. Don't you love that name? I mean, I just love it. www.thehookersdaughter.com. And the name of the book is The Hooker's Daughter. If you want to find out what happened to a woman, she's a little kid and all that stuff, and then she's okay now, she's made it. It's an interesting topic. Hey, Dale, where can people grab this book at? Where can they go? Probably your website.
Thank you. Well, they can go to my website and order it there, or they can from the publisher, which is Infinity Publishing, or Amazon, and it's on tablet for those that do Nook and Kindle. It's available that way for all tablet readers.
Okay, cool. Last thing I want to ask you, because we got a minute left, so you're going to have to kind of make it quick if you can. Do you have any message you want to leave with the audience? Any message at all? If you do, now's the time to throw it at the microphone.
Yes, what a wonderful gift I have received as a result of this endeavor, and that is hearing from people from all over, people that I necessarily never knew or barely knew, about how my transparency, and by writing this story and showing the world that I too am not hiding behind what happened, that their coming forth has given me a wonderful present that I never anticipated as a result of this. I did this for my children. I wanted them to know my history, which I had shielded them from as young people. And then by doing this, I found out that I have helped so many people, not that I don't pretend to be a therapist, but so many people have come forth that I never dreamed would ever happen. And to reiterate, I'm so grateful for what I've been given.
Well, you are so grateful, and I am so grateful to have had the pleasure of meeting you and hearing your story in about a half hour. I'm going to read your book, so it'll be a little bit longer, but it's a privilege to have met you and hear your inner self. talk about what you really want to get across. And also, I want to hear some funny, crazy stories about when you're a little kid. So that I'll get out of your book. But Dale, please say goodbye to all the folks. And by the way, thank you very much for being my guest. Please say goodbye.